this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Sunday morning chat time again, and I'm starting with a complaint. Grr. I can't do grr anymore, too soft. Like you believe that. My next door neighbour on Sundays has bacon for breakfast. And there's something about bacon that as soon as you get a whiff of it, you've got to have some. And I can't, because I haven't got any. Grr. So just literally, most people know I smoke. I don't do that in the house or in the grow room. It has to be outside, so it's weather dependent as well. And before doing this, I'm going to be grounded for a while, because obviously I've got to film it. That takes time, and it's indoors, and then I've got to go and process the video and sort all that stuff out, which is also indoors. So usually before I start, I have my last cigarette for some considerable time and get myself a coffee. Self-promotion. Everybody loves that. But yeah, often it's just at that time when they're having breakfast next door. They always seem to have bacon for breakfast. Perhaps I'll have to get some. I'm certainly not going out to get some, but yes. And I'll do it to them on a Saturday when they haven't got any. Right, some news. I've just watched Rachel's video reviewing her year, and she's got some surprises, and this happens on YouTube. It's unpredictable. This is how an unknown person can get a viral video. It just, for some reason, catches the imagination and starts to spread, and hence the expression viral. It spreads, you know, and an unknown person can suddenly get a flipping video with 1 million views and become a star overnight. That doesn't normally happen in the orchid world, but nonetheless, for some reason, some videos are just out of proportionally popular on your channel than others. And it's not necessarily the ones you think. That makes it unpredictable. Now, long time ago, most people that have followed my channel for absolutely ages know that I would not be in a video. I refuse to be on camera. There was good reason for this. This isn't pretty. The blooms are. It's as simple as that. And today I'm doing scruffy. And there's a bother factor in being ready to present oneself on the camera. And today I couldn't be, so tough. Take it as it is. Always said viewing is not compulsory. But yeah, so you just get an odd video now and again. I've only got one Cymbidium, and I repotted it once and filmed it, and it's one of my top viewed videos. Surprisingly, it's also quite an old one, so it's had a long time to build up the number of views, obviously. But you know, some things are popular, some things that you think are going to do great don't, you know, and others that you think, you know, you just sort of did it as a matter of course, and it takes off. So these things vary, but it is nice to review what you do if you've been going long enough to look back. You've got analytics, you can have a look at these things and find your popular stuff, what seems to have worked best. Now, I'm not saying you should change your channel to only do what works best, because there can an element of tiredness can creep in, where if you keep repeating the same thing over and over again, people can become tired of it. But then try and think of something new. In the orchid world, what can you do? You can unbox and get new orchids. They're popular. Well, I don't do much of that now, so I'm cutting my own throat there, but then there's a very good reason for it. I don't want loads more orchids, so I can't change that. But, you know, then there's a spotlight type video, looking at a particular plant, doing a brain dump on everything you know and can find out about that plant. But for me, it's finding those sort of things out is one thing, but anybody can do that. I think it's more important to say how you grow it yourself and how you've got it to be like that. You know, half dead, looking quite good, looking spectacular. These are the sort of categories our orchids tend to come into. They don't all work, and that you have to accept. Doesn't always work. But anyway, that's YouTube stuff out of the way. Another bit of news. this was quite funny because normally, I've said before, I do my YouTube and my Facebook stuff in the mornings while I'm half asleep, trying to get a bit more of that down my neck and wake up. And it's an ideal time to just sit around. My cat comes and sits with me and I potter about on the computer. And that time of day I wouldn't do much else, so it's a useful way to use up time that is of no use for anything else. That works for me. And I, for some reason, went back on the computer yesterday, sort of later in the day, and I just had a look to see if anybody loaded any interesting videos, and noticed that Orchid Diva had a live video running. Now, I very rarely catch those. I'm not into this notification thing, and the reason I don't bother is that I don't carry my phone around with me all the time, and I don't use my phone for emails, so it doesn't make a noise when a new email arrives. Bearing in mind I've got 5 email accounts, it'll be binging away all flipping day long, and I'd have to go and have a look to see if it was something like that. So I was lucky, I just caught it, and it was a gathering of YouTubers. Now, this doesn't happen often. You might find a pair now and again. If you're really lucky, you might get 3. But they had 4 all together. The 2 Blancas, Todd and Maria Young. And they were in an area of an orchid show that had been set aside for YouTubers to gather. And in this case, make as much noise as possible. I'm surprised they didn't get thrown out. Outrageous amount of racket they were putting up. But it was all good stuff, so I thought, oh, that's actually live. I'll put a comment in. Now, normally when you put a comment in on a live broadcast, the people doing the broadcast don't let out a shriek of delight. So I was over the moon. Yeah, so I got a shriek of delight because I joined in the broadcast. Unfortunately, it was right near the tail end, and I'm sorry, Todd, I did interrupt you talking about your Vanda, which is very nice, by the way. I'll see that separately, I'm sure. But yeah, it was nice to be like appreciated with a shriek. Go and have a watch. But part of that broadcast, once I went back and watched the whole thing and cringed at the shriek of delight, an update. It's an important update, actually. A lot of us who know Rick L from that particular channel have probably been worried about the lack. Yeah. The reason is obvious. We all know what's coming. It's an inevitability, I would think. But long time no see. But Todd had been in touch with Rick and actually held a text up from Rick. Yeah, he's not in a good way. We know that. But at least there was some contact there, and he's going to try and do another video. And I emphasize the word try. If he does manage to do one, it may well be the last one, so do bear that in mind. But at least it was an update. Some news is better than none. I was thinking then at that time about some of the people I've known well over the years that just faded away and went missing, and you never know why. You know, you don't know what's happened to them. Are they okay? I mean, people get life changes, change jobs, change countries, you know, move house. All sorts of things can change such that YouTube takes just a low enough priority that it just stops for some people. That's life and YouTube. Yeah, it was good to join in, even if it was for the last couple of minutes. But as I said, I don't get the notification, so I think that's the first live broadcast of Orchid Divas that I've ever actually caught while it was running live. I watched them afterwards. It's never quite the same, is it? Because it's when something's live, you know it's spontaneous and anything can happen next. You know, somebody can walk right in front of you when you're filming and stand there and hold a conversation with something else. And you can't be rude and go, "Excuse me, I'm filming." Well, I suppose you can't. Maybe you can. I don't know. It's never happened to me. But yeah, so that's that lot out of the way. What else is coming up? I've got shows coming up soon. Oh, my friend Lynn has done another video. And don't be harsh, you people who go and watch that video, but I think Lynn's managed to include the same clip twice during her video. Now, I know what's going on at home, so, you know, putting those clips together, probably wasn't easy. So watch it in the light it was produced in. Yeah. So yeah, there are troubles in the house as such, but if it's private, it's private. So we don't go any further with that. But give it a watch anyway. There's some smashing plants, absolutely smashing plants. As far as my plants are concerned, apart from what you've already seen, there's not much going on. My time of year is coming soon, really. Oh, one thing I will show you, if I can I get it out? Yes, just. This Cattleya is on the list to go in the bin. Except for it managed to push a bud up, so I've decided to keep it a little bit longer. But this is a tatty looking object, and it just doesn't seem to want to grow very well for me. Although last year it did push out some roots, but yeah, we got a bud on that one, so I'm at least going to let it bloom. Well, you can't throw a Cattleya away with a bud on it, even if it is one. Should have had more than one really, but one's better than none, so we'll have a last look at that one. I still probably won't keep it, but we shall see. At least we'll get the bloom coming soon. Quite soon, I would think, although that is quite a large bloom, that one. Quite a few people wanted to know how a plant is got ready for a show, the thoughts and how the judges see the plants, which I had a go at that, but on reflection that wasn't the best plant to choose because of the type of plant. There are certain orchids that there's not much you can do with for a show, like a Masdevallia for instance. I mean, I know this hasn't got any blooms on, I'm working on it, but what can you do with that to get it ready for a show? And the answer is not much. All you can do is look for leaves that are not in a perfect condition and get them off down at the bottom, take them out of view. Yeah? And I mean, this one has quite long stems. This is Masdevallia ignea, so when it does bloom, the blooms will raise themselves up above. Now they may all come out one side. Well, you can contrive that a bit by using some relatively short stakes in amongst the leaves and actually just guide a few of them over to the other half of the plant so that it looks a bit more even. But apart from having nice clean bright leaves, there's not a lot you can do with that. However, when you get to something like a Cattleya, and I deliberately put this to one side, and I may have a go at this soon, if you think about this, flipping monstrosity, no, you don't come with the Laelia, you leave that behind, thank you. That's one of my pet peeves, is when you're trying to move a plant and the blooms on one plant get hooked in another one and drag it off the shelf. Now, this has got 4 spikes on it. Now, to put that in a show like that would be silly. Reasons? Manky old leaves. Yeah, you don't leave those on, you take those off. And if you've got old pseudobulbs that have completely gone yellow with no leaves on and haven't had any for ages, well, take them off at the base. They don't need to be there. And in this particular case, these sheaths, yeah, look untidy. Now that's how it grows. There's nothing wrong with that, but there is. If you're thinking about going to a show, if you take these off, well, this is not going to be very easy with one hand, but these do come off. I'll see if I can get one to peel down. And underneath there will be a little skin which will normally come off if you wet it. You've got a nice shiny green pseudobulb. Well, that looks a bit better, doesn't it? Even though this is perfectly natural, all this stuff, that's how they grow. And that's how they should look. But for a show, tidy it up. What else could I do on this? Well, we've got, hang on, let's get, first of all, you've got to decide which is the front of the plant. Well, that ain't going to look too good because all the blooms will be at the back, and the tatty leaves, which I would take off, would be at the front. Yeah? So it's going to have to come around this way, something like that. Let's say that's the front view. Well, the first thing that's wrong with that is this spike here is slightly hidden behind that one, so that one needs to move. Yeah? Something like that. And now, having moved that one over and got a nice spread of 3 spikes, we've got this little one tucked in the back that's hidden. So that would probably have to go something like that. That would be better. And this one at the back here would be better if it was brought forward so that they were on a par. And in addition to that, because of the way this was facing when it opened, the blooms on this cluster face that way. They don't face that way. Well, there's not much I can do about that. I wouldn't recommend twisting a Cattleya pseudobulb. It'll probably come off in your hand, Your Honour. But yeah, so there are some things you can do. Well, somebody's going to ask, what the hell is this? This is Cattleya Young Min Orange. This was the one I got from Chantel before she packed in orchids and went to Australia. As a memory, I got this as a memory of Chantel. Always blooms well for me. And this is one of the ones that we did the experiment on and cut the rhizome. And it shot out in 2 other places. Which of the 2 growths would you think were the ones produced by cutting the rhizome, and which are the 2 that were the front leads? Well, it's blatantly obvious, isn't it? The 2 big strong growths are the one it produced naturally. The 2 smaller growths are the ones it pushed out farther back. They're not up to full strength yet, but the next ones will be. So once this blooming's over, I should get 4 new growths. Those new growths will be more even in size. Yeah? So this cutting the rhizome thing does work. Don't know how close I can get that without going out of focus, but cluster Cattleya type. So multiple blooms, quite close together, and provide a splash of colour. And why I like this one, it's just orange. It hasn't got any red in it or anything else. It's just that bright, beautiful orange. But look at the colour change. When it opens, it's almost yellow. Yeah? And then these have been open the longest. They're a much, much deeper orange. Lovely plant as far as blooming is concerned. It needs a tidy up. Not now. Busy. Busy waffling away like I do on Sundays. That's the Sunday thing. I didn't go back where you came from. Not take the Laelia with you this time. Right, apart from that, it's not the time of year. My twinkles are having a go. The little yellow one in the pot was finally opened. I mean, that's just a small piece of what was left after the pseudobulbs decided to rot. But I managed to save that little piece, which is, you know, come into bloom, looks nice. And when that plant fell apart, removing the manky bits, I managed to get 2 tiny little pieces, which I decided to have a go on the mount, and one of those bloomed as well. So we've got several twinkles on the go now. The cinnamon ones on the mount, they're still out in bloom. They're looking good, both of them, the smaller and the larger. The tiny twinkles looking good. The red fantasy has got hardly any blooms left. They are now in pots and all over the floor, whereas they were on the plant once. We've all appreciated the Laelia anceps. Unfortunately, these are not long-lived, so I don't know how much longer we're going to get out of those. I am really hoping that's still in bloom when my daughter comes down next weekend. That will be good. Apart from that, the Mackay is looking good up the back. Tamiami is looking good. The Tamiami peach, let me think. I've got 2 weeks to go before I can get that to a competition table at Bournemouth. That should still be looking good. And with 3 spikes on and a good plant, that may do okay. I've always said before, I don't grow my plants to show, but if something's in a reasonable state to take to a show, and I can be bothered, then I might. But I don't do it on a regular basis like some do. And also I know that my friend Lynn, whose video I've just mentioned, new video up today, in that video she's shown some of her plants that are probably going to go to the Bournemouth competition tables. Well, if they're going, I just as well not bother, quite honestly. That's how it goes. And if your plant's sat at home, it's not going to get seen by anybody else, is it? So if you belong to an orchid society, take it along. You never know. And in the competitive elements, you know, okay, you might not get anything, but at least you joined in. And when it's an actual Orchid Society show, a competitive show, everything's divided up into sections. And I got a first and a bit of silverware for being the only plant in that section once. And it wasn't a particularly good plant. You know, if that had stayed at home, that section would have been empty. They'd have removed it from the table. So, you know, give them a chance. Try your luck. Oh, the other thing, one of the very popular dendrobiums last year was Dendrobium canico. And that went out of bloom a while back. And I said it will probably be well into next year before it gets to the point where it can bloom again. But, yet again, on an old cane, totally unexpected, we got a cluster showing. So it is going to be back in bloom. I wasn't expecting this to bloom until these last year's growths actually finished growing and decided to arch over a bit. But this one is also coming back into growth. There's a couple of new shoots starting at the base, that's always good, especially this early in the year, because providing those don't rot off or anything, it shouldn't do. This is a cooler grower anyway, so the temperature's not going to affect it. And as long as I don't get water all over them and leave them wet overnight, they should progress. Now, they've got more than a normal season to grow to full size. So those two growths that have started now, compared with some that perhaps start in a month or two's time, are probably going to be the longest ones. And then sometime during this year, we should start seeing some blooms coming on these top growths rather than just these older ones. A lot of these canes down here were on it when I got it, so they're not really my canes. It hasn't bloomed on one of my canes yet. But this is a likely candidate. It's nearly lost all its leaves now. It's a good big fat cane. I suspect we'll see some blooms on that this year. Hopefully. So that's that one. Ugh. Well, I'm not going to spend ages hooking plants down off areas that are mounted, because I can't see what I'm doing, and somebody's turned that bright light on in the sky, so every time I turn this way I'm getting blinded by the light. Cue for a song. And then you can have one single useless Roger point for saying who that song was by. Most of you wouldn't be old enough to even know that. Right, an update on the Orchids to Go, which I sort of set up like a blind auction, you could call it. Send me an email with your bids, and then whoever bids the most, without being silly, gets the plant. So far there are still a few plants that have had no bids. To a degree they were expected. The Rhynchostylis giganteas, I think I'm going to have to set fire to them. They just will not move, despite one having a spike on it. And the other one that I didn't expect anybody to want was the Phalaenopsis out of the store-bought Phalaenopsis series. They're Phalaenopsis like that, mass-produced ones, are common as muck. You don't need to pay money for ones like that, really. Most of the others have had one bid. I think 2 plants have had 2 bids, where there'll be a bit of competition. So there's still plenty of time. I'm not going to cut that off because I can't post plants now, this time of year. I'm not risking sticking plants, you know, in boxes and stuff and giving them to Postman Pat when it could be below 0 overnight in the warehouse, depot, whatever you want to call it. So I'm not doing that. We'll wait for better times. And on that note, the old day lengths are starting to move at a greater rate. So yeah, we need to get up to that magic 11 hours when the sort of orchids that most of us grow are going to trigger growth. They're going to think, right, now I'm comfortable. This is the day length I'm supposed to have, and they'll respond accordingly. And then not long after that we'll reach the magic 13 hours, which is normally their limit, 11 to 13 hours. And then it starts heading up 14, 15, 16, and they sort of think, what's going on? What happened to night time? It can affect some orchids, too much light for too long a period. But remember, the light levels sort of where I am in the UK are relatively low compared with more tropical areas. So our light levels are less intense, is the expression. No Vandas in bloom now. The big purple Vanda finally dropped all its blooms. That's gone. We'll have to wait a while for that to come back into bloom. I suspect that Vanda is going to have to grow another 2 leaves at least before it spikes again. Well, that's about it. Yeah, that is about it today. I can't think of much else, but it was good to see 4 YouTubers at once on a live broadcast. That's not that easy to achieve. I mean, I got trouble doing a live broadcast here where I'm actually hardwired to my hub because the laptop hasn't got a good enough graphics processing unit, so it can't keep up with the the amount of data it's trying to stream, despite increasing the memory. But to actually do that out and about, probably on a phone, the trouble is when somebody's filming live, you don't know what they're using to film, do you? Because they're using it. You can't see it, but I suspect very high-end phone is involved with being able to do a live broadcast with pretty good streaming, pretty good quality, and only the odd hiccup where you get that sort of thing, where the stream is just too great, the load's too much. But yeah, well impressed with being able to do that, and what a show. If I could get there, I flipping well would, but there would be a serious downside. If I put in, well, like sold a house or something to get the amount of money it would take to get to Miami from the UK and stop over the number of nights, etc. But the downside would be I wouldn't be able to bring anything home with me. Bit silly going to an orchid show where you can't buy anything, but it looked like a good event, I mean, at one point, I think on the setup day, there was a string quartet playing live music. I'd have sat down and listened to that for hours. Just live quality music there and then. Even if it's not the style of music you might like, it's there in front of you. You see the people playing it. I love all that sort of thing. And just next to them was a bar. And all around were orchids. Heaven. Absolute heaven. In that live broadcast that I managed to catch the tail end of, Todd actually looked up and said, well, I'm not here for the orchids, I'm here for the beer. I'm sure he wasn't, but I could sort of see the point. I don't think I've ever been to a show that's had a bar in it, like part of it. I mean, the Malvern show has got access to everything you could possibly want to eat or drink out and about, but not in the orchid marquee. There's nothing in there. So yeah, to actually have an orchid show in a wonderful setting, international, vendors from all over the place, and lovely atmosphere, live music, gently playing while you have a stroll round and set up your stuff. Looked like a pretty top-end event in my book. There's nothing like that in the UK, not even close. The only thing I can think of that would come close, which I may think about for next year, is Dresden. Very large international show in Dresden, and I've seen quite a few people that have visited and done videos and stuff. And it's an event where YouTubers sometimes gather. But it's a big deal for me, it involves flights, and I can't fly to Dresden from a local airport, so you're looking at one of the more bigger international ones, and then you've got to get to the airport, you've got to get there, you've got to travel from the airport in a country where I don't speak any of the language. So hard work to get to that show, but I'm thinking about it. It's a low-level thought, not a high-level thought. So, okay, well, thanks for dropping by, and I'm still, to a degree, racking my brains, going back to Rachel, which videos are most popular and some are surprising, why this one is. But it is and I've now got used to just doing it on a Sunday morning. Some suggested topics might be useful now and again, rather than just waffle. But unlike Martin says, you know, this is not wine waffle, this is coffee waffle. There is a difference. The wine waffle you can only get late in the afternoon, early evening. You can't get that during the day. You can only get coffee waffle during the day, and plenty of it. Okay, that'll do for today. I've got to process this and stuff, and I started yesterday. It suddenly dawned on me I'm getting behind on computer issues. I'm in charge of the magazine for Bournemouth Orchid Society. I've got loads of stuff to go in that magazine that I haven't got in there yet and formatted, made to look pretty. That takes quite a bit of work, that. My videos don't take me long. What else have I got to do on the computer? Oh, I've got to book our coach, sort that out with the venue, as to how many are going and all stuff like that. These are all sort of things like that to do. So I've got a fair bit to do on the computer work. I've also got to do, I'm redoing my talk that I do for non-orchid people, the talk that I go around to horticultural societies and things like that and do a chat on just basics on looking after orchids in the home for people who've got a couple that bought them at the garden centre, that sort of thing. I'm redoing that talk because last time I did it I decided I didn't like it anymore, so I've got to redo that one. Plus I've got to do a talk ready for April for orchid people, an orchid society talk that I haven't even started yet. All this is computer time and effort. So I've got a lot to do on that front. Now that I've got my posh chair, I can spend time doing that without hurting my back, which is important to me. It's weird to have something that's not quite right with you that's just in the back of your mind always. I've never had to worry about that before, but everything I'm doing all day long while I'm awake, I'm always thinking, is that going to be okay for my back? Is that going to mess my back up? Because we certainly don't want to go back to that again. And while I'm on that particular subject, that's physical. Yeah? What about if you can't sleep? Day after day. Listening to Insa talking about that as a problem and not knowing when it's going to end and if it's going to end. I mean, I can go long periods with very little sleep, like naps, and still fully function. That's just me. I'm funny like that. But some people can't. Some people don't get their regular sleep. They don't work properly the next day. It doesn't come out right. Flustered, clumsy, all sorts of things. But to go 2 days and physically not being able to go to sleep is quite something to have to put up with. Wouldn't do me much good. But then I've always said, if I'm tired, I can sleep standing up if I have to. I'll lean against the wall and have a nap. As long as it's a soft landing, of course, in case you get it wrong. But yeah, you know, we don't, you know, having a physical problem, something that hurts or something that doesn't work properly is one thing. But to have something that's depriving you of an essential function like sleep, there's so much goes on when you're asleep that we're unaware of. I mean, listening to some of the things that happen to Insa when he's had a long period with no sleep, like shadow people creeping in your peripheral vision. Perhaps those are memories in here of people you've known or have met that are just getting recalled but not properly. And sounds in the background, is that echoes of your favourite music that you've had from the past that are trying to be remembered but not being recalled properly because that function's not working properly. So yeah, it's a weird thing. And what about this for a theory then? I'm not having a go at you, Incy. These are theories, nothing to do with you personally, but the feeling of somebody brushing past you with these shadowy things, are those what people have called ghosts in the past? I definitely saw a ghost. There was a shadowy figure went across the room and I felt something brush against me. Is it that? That's a theory for you. When a ghost comes up to me like that and goes, boo, I'll believe in them. But I do believe in something that exists in our world that we don't know about and can't put our fingers on. There are too many instances, you know, that's the way I look at it. It can't all be made up. Can't all be porky pies, can they? So there's something about. But I've never heard of a ghost hurting anybody, so I wouldn't class it as a worry. Depends how skittish and scared you can get. I don't do scared. I analyse and deal with. Yeah, I got a gene missing or something. I'm a strange person. I virtually can't be frightened. Nothing actually scares me or frightens me. That's got me into a lot of trouble in the past as well, especially in my younger days when I had, there's a plane going over. Nowadays it would be called anger management issues. I just called it a bad temper. But combine, you combine a bad short fuse, we'll call it, with youth, you can get into a fair bit of trouble going down that path. And then you get some training and you get to the point where you don't worry about that, and funny, it just stops happening at that point. That was a strange concept. Didn't get angry anymore. I don't now. I can't be bothered to get all fussed, flustered and she said that and she said that. And why bother? Just let it go. Look down, take a deep breath, turn and walk away. It makes life so much easier. And on that note, I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.